Hi, I'm Daniel Likius, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have my special guest. He's my feature author of the month. He's award-winning author and best-selling author to no other than Mr. Alex Shvartsman.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me back.
Thank you for coming back, Mr. Alex. And as usual, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Alex Shvartsman. I am a science fiction and fantasy writer, translator, and anthologist. I currently live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm originally from Ukraine. So English is actually my third language. And I've been, writing fiction and working in the science fiction and fantasy genre for close to 15 years now. With several novels out, a couple of short story collections, and many, many anthologies and magazine issues that I've edited, as well as a number of translated works between short fiction, movie scripts, video game content, etc., which I've done for for studios, video game companies, and publishers.
Thank you for sharing your talents to the world, Mr. Alex. So, what inspired you to become an author?
From a very young age, I've loved reading science fiction and fantasy. I really enjoyed the what if aspect of these books. I mean, I read voraciously in other genres as well, but what really drew me to science fiction in particular was that it paused. It asked these questions with really interesting scenarios that couldn't happen in real life or were unlikely to happen in real life, which is a really good way to develop a tool set of looking at the future, looking at the society around us, etc. And it's just plain fun, reading about dragons and spaceships and explorers and aliens. So I've always enjoyed it. I wanted to become a writer from a very young age, but because my family immigrated from Ukraine to the United States, and I didn't speak any English at the time, I gave up on those dreams for a long time. And eventually, when my English kind of, you know, grew to the level where I could actually write professional fiction, I didn't know that at the time, obviously, but at least I could attempt to write professional fiction. That's when I actually started on my creative journey, and I never looked back. I've been at it now for a while, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Yes, indeed. So, can you tell us about your award winning piece?
So the very first time I was nominated and subsequently won the award was for a short story titled "Explaining Cthulhu to Grandma." So this short story is a fantasy piece about a magical pawn shop where somebody brought in a Cthulhu, which was trapped in a little snow globe, like alternate dimension. And the owner, the shop is run by a team of grandmother and granddaughter. And the young granddaughter is very ambitious, and she wants to prove to her grandmother that she's capable of running the shop. So she's very proud of having acquired such a rare and an unusual item, and now she has to try and figure out how to make money on it. And all sorts of weird individuals show up interested in Cthulhu, but not particularly interested in paying money for it. And so it's an urban fantasy story with a lot of humor and a lot of heart. And it was extremely, extremely well received. I was very pleased about that. I never imagined that this would lead to any sort of award nomination or let alone win when I wrote the story. But I was very happy, of course, to learn that it was nominated and it won the WSFA award for the best short story of that year. So that was quite an experience for me. It was my first award win, and subsequently I've been nominated for a number of other awards. So I don't think I've ever actually won another award. So I have, I think, 4 other award nominations for by British Science Fiction Association, by the Canopus Award for Excellence in Interstellar Fiction, but that was my one win.
Congratulations, Mr. Alex. So, can you tell us about your writing process?
So I have to be excited about the idea. Usually it starts with an idea, and the idea could be anything. I mean, it could be an unusual character, it could be an unusual scenario. Earlier, I mentioned the what if questions that science fiction is known for. So some of the stories really revolve around that what if concept, or it even could be a mood. So there's a lot of different ways to reach inspiration. Writers, when we talk to each other at the bar at a convention somewhere, we often gently make fun of the most commonly asked question of writers, and that is, where do you get your ideas? And the secret is, and any writer will tell you this, ideas are a dime a dozen. Everybody has more ideas than they can write. Anybody who writes or spends a lot of time thinking about the creative process, thinking about writing, they have a backlog of ideas that they will never implement because coming up with an idea can take seconds. Making a novel out of it can take a year. And so we have to be very selective about which ideas we actually pursue, which ideas end up on the page. And different ideas demand different lengths. Just this week, an idea struck me for a flash fiction piece, which I came up with, sat down and wrote, finished, and submitted to a magazine, all within like a 2.5 hour span. So that story just kind of flowed out of me, but it was a really easy. It was 1,000 words. It was really easy to sort of conceptualize and write. So in that time period, I even had time to send it to a couple of friends so they could read it real quick and just to make sure that I'm not crazy, that it works. And then other ideas require months and months of execution because they're novel ideas. And so you have to carefully husband your ideas. We all have some method of keeping track of them, just writing them down in a file, scribbling them on a piece of paper. And then you kind of sample from that and go like, well, where can I use that? Sometimes an editor reaches out and says, we're doing an anthology on such and such theme. Do you want to write something for us? And you look at your file and you go, oh, I do have an idea in my file that I could turn into a story, and now combined with the theme of this anthology, the idea may take unexpected shape that you didn't have prior to the kind of like the anthology theme adding that extra dimension. So that's the process. I mean, usually, and from a more technical standpoint, I have to know how the story begins and I have to know how the story ends, and that way, anything in between is a winding path, and I can kind of slowly make my way as long as I have a goal in mind, make my way toward that goal. But a lot of the creative process will happen in the middle where I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm just kind of writing and exploring, and some of the best lines and best ideas in the story occur during that like wandering window.
Very well said. Mr. Alex, so what challenges have you faced in your writing career?
Well, the very first challenge for me was that, again, English is my third language, so I was very concerned with whether or not I would just be good enough on a technical level, so to write fiction. And also, I didn't have any sort of professional writing background. I've never met a living science fiction writer or any kind of like professional writer before I engaged in this. I've always been an avid reader, but I didn't have any contacts in the industry, no leg up whatsoever. So I kind of started at level zero. I mean, I literally just started reading online, like just a little bit of information, articles, things like that here and there about writing, about structure, and then jotting down notes and writing and learning by doing. I'm a great believer in learning through the process. I mean, I taught myself programming that way. I taught myself a lot of other like useful life skills that way. I'm not very good at learning traditionally, like on a hypothetical level. So when a teacher will tell you like, okay, well, these are kind of like, this is the bird's eye view of whatever the subject is. I like to learn by going, okay, this is the end result. How was it accomplished? Like, what are the lines of code that resulted in this program running? And so I kind of approached writing in the same way, where I just kind of looked at said, well, every writer has tools, right? And those tools are very different. Some of them are, some of them are just understanding story structure, understanding, what works and what doesn't, like how to keep a reader engaged. And you develop those tools for a very long time. I'm still learning. And I'm sure that most writers, other than maybe people who've been doing this for 30 or 40 years, will tell you that they learn something new from every new project that they work on. And I can certainly report that I'm still in that stage. Every novel that I write is a new experience, and I learn a lot from doing that. And I even learn still from some of the short stories that I'm working on, and discover new things and kind of hone my craft. So I quite like that, actually. I don't want to get to the point where nothing surprises me and I'm just kind of able to sit there and do this and not feel like I'm still improving.
Indeed, Mr. Alex. So, what authors or books have influenced your writing?
So some of the earliest works that I've been exposed to were science fiction short stories that were translated into Russian from English. And so I grew up on reading people like Bob Shackley, Robert Silverberg, Frederick Brown, and many others who were writing short stories back in the 1940s to 1960s period primarily. A lot of the newer stuff was not available because there was a copyright treaty that happened sometime in the 70s, and after that treaty, the Soviet publishers couldn't simply steal the material without paying for it, which is what they were doing with the older stuff, unfortunately. So with the newer material, they had to actually pay the writers, so mostly they avoided translating those things. But the older works, some of them were translated and some were not. A lot of it had to do with censorship as well. So they tended to translate things that they saw as critical of capitalism. And a lot of the short stories, if you look at them through that lens, if you look at a lot of Shackley stories and and Silverberg stories, you could say that they're critical of capitalism, even though those authors were not necessarily any sort of socialists. So those stories got translated, whereas some other material, especially things that may have been anti-authoritarian. So, for example, Isaac Asimov, the robot stories, the Three Laws stories were widely translated, but the Foundation series was not because the Soviet regime would not have liked the ideas of it disseminated. So that was very formative for me, and I really cut my teeth on short stories more so than on novels, which is why when I started writing myself for a number of years, I just continued writing short stories without even attempting a novel. So I know my first novel came out in 2019, so it hasn't been all that long yet.
Looking forward for more books to come, Mr. Alex. But before we go, and I want to shout out our listeners in Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Saudi Arabia, for being part of this podcast because in Makkah province, I got 43% audience share. Our Riyadh Eastern province, Riyadh region, Mecca region, and Medina region. Again, shukran jazilan, marhaba, Saudi Arabia, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world, like Mr. Alex Shvartsman. So, Mr. Alex, how do you handle writer's block?
So I don't really believe in writer's block. I think that it's an affliction that primarily affects newer writers because they don't really have the skill set yet to the toolbox in their toolbox to work around it. What When you speak to writers who've been professional writers for most of their lives, they never complain about writer's block. So, like when you talk to people, like Mike Resnick, like Esther Friesner, like people who've been in the industry for a really long time and have written many books, you don't hear them complaining about this. And so, what I think it is people. There are a lot of different tools that you can use if the words are not flowing properly. First of all, just the easiest tool to use is power through this. Just write, even if you know you're going to delete a lot of it because it may not be coming out well. Just write through your writer's block, and there will be some ideas and some lines that'll be worth preserving, or it could be just your attitude at that moment, and so when you look at it with a fresh eye the next day, some more than you expected might be salvageable. Second, you can kind of flit between projects. So, like, if you don't feel like writing, because you don't know what happens next in your novel, then maybe edit a different project that that you need to work on. Maybe write a short story, maybe write a blog post. So get your brain into the mode of, hey, I'm doing something creative right now, and then go back to your original project with kind of like starting a lawnmower, right? You have to like kind of pull several times until the engine goes, and then once it's going, it'll be much easier to go back to that patch of lawn that you need cleared and work on it. So get your brain in gear, and then you can go back to the same project that was giving you trouble and hopefully get through it. But kind of the best overall way to deal with it is very similar to physical exercise. If you do it every single day or almost every day on some kind of a routine schedule, your mind will get used to it, just like your body would get used to physical exercise. Your mind will crave it, just like your body will crave physical exercise, and you will have a lot less trouble with what we call writer's block. And if you set yourself a really achievable goal, it doesn't have to be even 1,000 words a day. It could be 500 words a day. It could be 300 words a day. If you write 300 words a day, you will have a novel by then. So, and this is including revisions and everything. So just doing a little bit every day is better than kind of staring at a blank screen and refusing to write for a week, and then finally sitting down and writing 1,000 words or 2,000 words or something. And also a lot more healthy for your, like a lot better for your mental health.
Yes, amazing tips for those people having this writer's block. So, Mr. Alex, what is your favorite book that you have written and why?
That's like asking to pick between your children. So I can't legitimately answer that question because you're always excited about your newest project. And if you're not, then you're doing something wrong, right? Like, I mean, no matter how good or how successful some of the previous books that a writer have written, they should, in theory, be most excited about the latest time, right? So for the past almost 9 months, I've been working on a brand new book. It's not part of the series. It's like a completely original new story. And it's called The Best of All Possible Planets. And this is a space opera retelling of Candide by Voltaire, which is told as a series of Futurama episodes. So it's a pure, straight-up humor book in the vein of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in the vein of, those kind of books. And it makes fun of space opera tropes. So the kind of things that you are very familiar with, that you constantly read in books and in military SF and space opera books, and you see on the screen and things like Star Wars and Firefly and Star Trek. And so I just make fun of all of that for the entire book. And it took me 9 months, but that novel is finished and it's off to my agent. So hopefully in a couple of months, people at my agency will get a chance to read it and give me some feedback. But at the moment, that's what I'm most excited about because I just finished writing it. And if you ask me again in a month or in 2 months, I will be the most excited about whatever I'm working on then.
Okay, looking forward for your new novel. So, how do you approach research for your books?
So I try not to put myself into the position where I have to do a tremendous amount of research because it's very time consuming, right? Like, it's better to not to write about the subject that you're very easily going to get wrong. So, for example, I would not be the right person to write Regency romance because I just don't know enough history about that period to accurately depict it. And if you're writing something like a short story and it's in a setting that you really don't know anything about and don't understand, that's tough because somebody's going to call you out, right? Like, I mean, if you get things wrong, there's always going to be that reader or multiple readers that know a lot more than you do about that subject. So it's better to kind of focus on things that are either in the far future because, hey, like nobody knows what's going to happen. I can make up whatever I want. Or draw from your experience. So like for me, when they say write what you know, it's one of those truisms which is also not very accurate. I kind of hate a lot of the stock writing advice, and that's one of them because people completely misinterpret what that means. It doesn't mean you shouldn't never write about things that you didn't experience personally. It means that you should draw on your experience, on your life experience for inspiration. And maybe maybe you visited a country, and even though you're setting a story in a completely different time period, but you kind of get the sense of the culture, of what the cities are like, of what the sounds and smells are like when you're there, of the weather, of the kind of trees that your characters will see as they pass by. You can draw on all of that. And if you're writing about a place you've never been before, maybe you watch some videos and like do something, but you'll have less experiences. Maybe you'll focus less on those descriptions. But if you are able to kind of draw from your personal experience, it'll come out a lot more three-dimensional. So I think a lot of it is choosing the milieu and choosing the types of stories where you have a leg up, where you can talk about something that has been in some way has been within your personal experience.
Very well said, Mr. Alex. So, can you share a memorable moment from your writing career?
Well, I mean, there's been so many, and I'm always excited to run into people who've read my books, and it's very gratifying, especially if it's not somebody you know personally, right? Like, I mean, you literally just somebody you go to a convention for the first time, you've never been there, and somebody comes up and they want to talk about a moment from the book, something that they've read, and perhaps very humbling and really, really like deep moment for me was a number of years ago I wrote a novella, which is a steampunk alternate history novella called H.G. Wells' Secret Agent, which is a relatively slim humor book, which places Wells in this steampunk universe as kind of like an inept James Bond. And it's a fun story, but it wasn't. It was one of my earlier works. And somebody came up to me at a convention, and they saw the book on my, on the table, on my signing table, and they're like, "Oh, this book really, really helped me through a very dark time. I read it like after one of my parents passed, and it really helped me through that." And I was floored. I really didn't know what to say, because having the opportunity to have that sort of a positive impact on somebody's life is literally what being a writer should be all about, right? Like, it's not the money, because there's not that much, right? It's not the recognition or the fame, because most writers, even successful ones, don't walk down the street and like paparazzis are taking their pictures or anything like that. But being able to give that level of joy or comfort or support to somebody you've never met, you don't know, that's really what writing is all about, and that moment will always stay with me. I don't know that I'll ever be able to top that from personal experience of interacting with the reader.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Alex, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
To write. A lot of people like to talk about writing, and they like to talk about how when they have more free time, when their circumstances change, when they don't have bills to pay, when they don't have children to take care of, or whatever qualifier you want to put in there, then they will get down to actually writing, and they have a great idea for a novel, and they're sure it's going to be great. And then you talk to that same person a couple of years later, and they've literally done nothing other than have this conversation with a bunch of people. So you don't need to be a full-time writer. Very few people, even ones that are getting professionally published, that are successful, very few of them are full-time writers. A lot of writers do it because we love it. We do it because we just have to get the words on the page. It's almost like therapy for us in a way. So the best thing you can possibly do if you consider yourself an aspiring writer, and by the way, if you're writing, you're a writer, you're not an aspiring writer. You're only an aspiring writer if you're talking about writing, but you're not writing. But being published or not published, you're still a writer if you're a writer. So the best thing that you can possibly do to go from the aspiring stage to the writer stage is just give yourself that little achievable daily word count and say, every day I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever I can spare out of my day, and I'm going to write a few paragraphs. And guess what? If you just stick to that, you will have a novel draft very quickly, like probably within a year or less. And then you can revise it. You can start figuring out if you can shop it around, if it's worth sharing with people. Maybe your first novel will be no good, but it's a learning experience, right? Like, I mean, if you anything that you do, the first time you did it probably wasn't very good, right? Like when you're riding the bike, you didn't get on the bike and just, go for like a 10-mile ride. You probably fell off or almost fell off. So writing is just like that as well. Don't expect that you're going to write award-winning prose on your first go around. But do realize that the more you do it and the more you participate in critique groups, you learn, you listen to podcasts, you read books about on the subject. It is a skill. You do have to have talent, and talent is impossible to teach. But even if you have a tremendous amount of talent, you have to add skill and perseverance to that in order to succeed. And those things are absolutely within your control.
Definitely. Very well said, Mr. Alex. How do you balance writing with the other aspects of your life?
It's a bit tough, but I've established a routine for myself. So I do still have a day job, like I talked earlier. Most writers do, unless you're George Martin or Neil Gaiman or somebody who is just very, very, very successful and well recognized. And so over the last few years after the pandemic, I've changed my routine in that I go to work crazy early in the morning. I'm already at work by 6 in the morning. I get all my work done. I get out of there by like 11, and I come home. I'm still relatively fresh. I'm still, not exhausted. I'm not sleepy, which means that my brain is in high gear, and I can write, I can edit, I can translate. And so it gives me a good few hours every day to work on my creative projects. Ever since I changed my routine that way, I've been more productive. I've been consistently putting out, books, which is very important. I mean, you really, if you write a book that people like a lot and then you fall off the face of the earth for like 10 years or even 2 years, people will forget you exist. Because, like, think back to a book you read and liked 2 years ago. If you haven't read anything else by that author, you may have a hard time remembering a book like that. So it's important to steadily get work out there. Remind people that you exist, remind people that they like reading your fiction. And so I've been trying to do just that and put out short stories, put out anthologies every once in a while, and of course novels.
What are some themes or topics that you are passionate about exploring in your writing?
Well, I primarily have kind of almost by accident became known for writing humor. I never when I set out to become a writer, I really never thought of myself as a potential humorist, right? I always thought I would be writing these like adventure stories that take themselves really seriously and, big save the universe type space operas. And then I found that I like writing humor. I like being silly, and it comes naturally to me, and people laugh, and that's just really, really pleasant to share that with them. And it does come with some risks because when you're writing a humor story, like nobody has the exact same sense of humor as everybody else. So you're never going to get as many of the people on board for a humor book as you will for a non-humor book. Even the most successful humor writers like Terry Pratchett, like Douglas Adams, no, there are people who absolutely hate them, absolutely hate their work. And so you're not maybe going to be as universally beloved, but it doesn't matter because there's going to be plenty of people who are seeking out those kinds of works, and that's what I want to write. Now, I don't only write humor; I write other things as well. But lately, I find that I kind of, given that the world around us is often not the happiest of places, I find solace in writing humor, and I find a lot of comfort in being able to share humor with other people and share that solace with them as well.
Yes, looking forward for your humor novels, Mr. Alex. But before we go on, please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef and one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our Food 101 culinary courses. Volume 1 will be basic, Volume 2 is fundamental, Volume 3 is principles. So please do purchase our Food 101 culinary courses. And these courses will give you knowledge how to create a delicious food. So Mr. Alex, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. My website is alexshvartsman.com. So just like my name that appears on the screen.com. It has a link to all of my projects, all of my books, anthologies, etc. And I also do have a brand new project that I'm excited about, and we'll be launching a Kickstarter campaign for that in late July. And this project is going to be a picture book. So it's going to be kind of like a comic book, but in a hardcover, hard page format. And it's called Dreidel of Dread, the Very Cthulhu Hanukkah. And it is a Lovecraftian Hanukkah story which makes fun of the sort of saccharine Christmas specials, while at the same time being a kind of self-referential saccharine Hanukkah special. So if you're interested in checking out some of the artwork, just go to my website, and you will find links there, and as well as a postcard posted there with some of the artwork.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Alex Shvartsman, because if you support him, more science fiction novels and humor come, and more to come. So, Mr. Alex, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
More to come, people. See you soon.